I've been spending time looking at Chad Daybell's website, reading his blog posts, and it's pretty clear to me that he was obsessed with the idea of the second coming. He mentions the second coming constantly. Unfortunately, it feels like some members of the church are acting a lot like Joy. This is Chad's writings. They want and expect life to be perfectly fine from now until the second coming. If anyone hints that there might be a bit of sadness in the future, these people ironically show fear, anger, and disgust. Throughout his blog post, he mentions the second coming over and over and over again. I actually think that this might have been a very subtle sign that something was not quite right with Chad. And that's a theme of this episode. Can we all spot the subtle signs that something is very, very wrong? Because we can all be fooled. And I think his marriage, that looked on the outside to be stable and enduring, covered up his abnormalities. The truth of the matter is, the people closest to Chad who knew him may have thought that his prophecies were harmless. And that's what makes someone like Chad very dangerous. The signs are there, but they are very subtle. It seems he took his faith and just twisted it into something warped, with these doomsday premonitions. He even mentions the doomsday character in a movie. He just was completely obsessed with the end of times. And, maybe his wife, Tammy Daybell, in the initial years, she might have thought it was harmless. But it seems to be his obsession, which just became worse and worse over time. He even mentions doomsday prophecies using characters in films. He mentions bunkers. He mentions the Great Gathering, world starvation, floods, earthquake. It seems to me that from the early days when he was starting his family with Tammy Daybell, that he was just obsessed with everything ending. And he often mentions preparing for the end in his writings. And that's just bizarre. He talks about receiving messages from gods and spirits, and he talks about miracles and visions. It's just not normal for someone to be so obsessed. He talks about looking for a house in Rexburg before he moved, and how this particular house had a pond. And I remember saying before Tylee and JJ were found that the kids were very near water, so it's ironic that he had a pond in his yard. The moral of this particular episode is that we should look out for the subtle signs that something isn't quite right. We should listen to our guts. Something was very wrong with this man. And as he aged, these delusions just continued to manifest. And now, of course, we have this terrible outcome. It seemed on the surface that he had this beautiful marriage. He met Tammy when they were both very, very young. He had this fruitful marriage. He had lots of children. But he just had this obsession with his own delusions of grandeur. And, sometimes I wonder, did Tammy Daybell over the years get tired of these prophecies that he had? Was she aware? Did she know that she was in any danger? Because he was just obsessed with his own warped mind. He was obsessed with his own warped thinking. And it's not normal for you to be, because many of the writings that I read, he wrote these things when he had just started his marriage to Tammy Daybell. And, it's not normal to be thinking about the end when you've just started a relationship with a woman. He was writing these things about the end of times when he got married to, before he even got married to Tammy Daybell. So it's not normal to be thinking about the end when you're just getting started in life. It's not normal to be thinking about the end when you're building a family. And he does mention sometimes that some of his thoughts and some of the things that God was telling him, He never mentioned to Tammy Daybell because he knew that she wouldn't accept what he was thinking, or she wouldn't accept his beliefs. So when Laurie came along and believed everything he was telling her, and accepted everything that he said as truth, as coming from God, can you imagine the narcissistic supply that he would have gotten from all of that? Laurie was the complete opposite of his wife in many, many ways. And she was buying everything that Chad was telling her. And she obviously had her own delusions before she met Chad. So when they meet and they both find that they feel the same way, they have the same thoughts, they have the same beliefs, they see things, they have the same perspective. That was just a very, very dangerous combination. And the outcome of this union has just been devastating to so many people. And then, you have all these other victims as well. So I just wanted to share that with you. We must look out, and me, myself, because I can be fooled. Because some of these people, these coverts, people with covert personalities, they're wolf in sheep's clothing, and they can fool anybody. So I can also be fooled. We have to look for the subtle signs. We have to look for the subtle signs that there's something not quite right with somebody. Because there were many, many subtle signs that something was very wrong with Chad, that something wasn't right about his teachings, that there were a lot of signs and a lot of things in his writings that were just abnormal. So if there's anything you can take away from this episode, is to look for the subtle signs in someone, because with Chad, there were very subtle signs that there was something wrong with him, and wrong with the way he was thinking, wrong with his doctrine. There was just something not right about this guy.